Think you know everything about Robert Townsend's beloved musical drama? From a director who couldn't dance choreographing his own musical numbers to Michael Jordan getting impatient during a 3-minute national anthem performance, the making of The 5 Heartbeats is packed with bizarre behind the scenes secrets that rival any Hollywood fiction. These surprising revelations about the 1991 classic will change how you watch this R&B masterpiece forever. Fact 1. Director had 2 left feet. When Robert Townsend decided to write, direct, produce, and star in The 5 Heartbeats in 1991, he faced one major problem that would haunt him throughout the entire production. Despite casting himself as Duck Matthews, one of the main singing and dancing members of the fictional rhythm and blues group, Townsend had a secret that could have derailed the whole movie. He literally could not dance to save his life. This wasn't just a case of being a little rusty or needing some practice. Townsend genuinely had what he later described as 2 left feet, making his decision to put himself in a role that required extensive choreography and dance sequences one of the most ambitious and risky moves in his filmmaking career. The problem became even more complicated because The 5 Heartbeats wasn't just any movie, it was a musical drama that depended heavily on authentic-looking performance sequences to tell the story of a Motown-inspired vocal group's rise to fame. Throughout the filming process, Townsend had to constantly hide this fact from his cast, crew, and especially the cameras. He developed elaborate workarounds and clever camera angles to mask his dancing limitations, often relying on creative editing and strategic positioning to make his performance look convincing. The legendary Harold Nicholas, one half of the famous Nicholas Brothers tap dancing duo, served as the film's choreographer and played the character Sarge. Working with a real dancing legend while secretly being unable to dance himself added an extra layer of pressure and irony to Townsend's already challenging role as the film's director and star. The situation became so stressful that Townsend later admitted he had scars to prove it from the experience of trying to pull off this elaborate deception while simultaneously managing every other aspect of the production. Fact 2. Studio executives wanted church scene cut. One of the most powerful and emotionally moving scenes in The 5 Heartbeats almost never made it to theaters because studio executives at 20th Century Fox wanted Robert Townsend to cut it entirely from the film. The scene in question was the church sequence near the end of the movie, where the audience discovers that Eddie King Jr., the group's troubled former lead singer who had fallen into drug addiction, has gotten clean and is now singing gospel music with his girlfriend, Baby Doll. This pivotal moment occurs when choirboy calls Duck and invites him to attend Sunday service at his church, promising him a special surprise that he won't reveal over the phone. When Duck arrives and takes his seat in the congregation, the church choir begins to perform, and to his complete shock and joy, he hears Eddie's unmistakable voice singing the gospel song, "I Feel Like Going On." The scene serves as Eddie's redemption arc, showing that he has overcome his demons and found peace through faith, while also providing emotional closure for the broken friendship between the former bandmates. However, film executives felt the scene was unnecessary and wanted Townsend to remove it completely during the editing process. They apparently believed the religious content might alienate some viewers or that the scene slowed down the film's pacing. Townsend fought hard to keep the sequence in the final cut, recognizing that it was essential to the story's emotional impact and Eddie's character development. The director later revealed this behind-the-scenes battle in his documentary, Making the 5 Heartbeats, explaining how he had to defend one of the film's most memorable and tearful moments from being eliminated entirely by studio interference. Fact 3. 0 actors auditioned for 5 roles. Robert Townsend's casting process for The 5 Heartbeats became one of the most extensive and ambitious talent searches in film history, with the director personally seeing close to 10,000 actors for just 5 main roles. This massive undertaking required Townsend to hold open casting calls in 3 major cities across the United States, setting up auditions in New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles to find the perfect actors who could not only act, but also convincingly portray members of a 1960s rhythm and blues vocal group. The sheer scale of this casting process was almost unheard of for an independent filmmaker, especially considering that Townsend was working with a relatively modest budget from 20th Century Fox. Most directors might see a few hundred actors for major roles, but Townsend was determined to find authentic performers who could capture the essence of the Motown era and the specific dynamics he envisioned for each character in the group. He needed actors who could handle both the dramatic emotional scenes and the musical performance sequences that were central to the film's success. What makes this casting marathon even more remarkable is that Townsend was simultaneously wearing multiple hats as the film's writer, director, producer, and lead actor. While managing all these responsibilities, he still made time to personally evaluate thousands of hopeful performers, looking for that special combination of acting ability, musical talent, and screen presence that each role demanded. The extensive audition process paid off, as many of the actors he eventually chose, including Michael Wright, Leon Robinson, Harry Lennox, and Tico Wells, delivered career-defining performances that helped make The Five Heartbeats a beloved classic that continues to resonate with audiences more than 30 years later. Fact 4. Whitney Houston rejected role as too small. Whitney Houston was actually offered a significant role in The Five Heartbeats, but turned it down because she felt the part wasn't substantial enough for her big screen debut. A decision that came just 1 year before she would make her iconic film entrance in The Bodyguard in 1992. Robert Townsend had approached the superstar singer about playing Baby Doll, the girlfriend of troubled lead singer Eddie King Jr., which would have been a natural fit given Houston's incredible vocal abilities and her status as one of the biggest music stars in the world at that time. The role of Baby Doll was actually quite important to the film's emotional storyline, as the character serves as both Eddie's love interest and a witness to his descent into drug addiction and eventual recovery. Baby Doll appears in several key scenes, including the heartbreaking moments where she confronts Eddie about his substance abuse and ultimately leaves him when his behavior becomes too destructive. The character also plays a crucial part in the film's redemption arc, appearing alongside Eddie in the church scene, where he performs gospel music after getting clean and sober. However, Houston apparently felt that the role didn't offer her enough screen time or character development to justify making her acting debut, especially considering her massive fame and the expectations that would come with her first movie appearance. The timing of this decision is particularly interesting because it came at the height of Houston's musical career, when she was already an established global superstar with multiple #1 hits. Troy Bayer ultimately landed the role of Baby Doll and delivered a memorable performance, but it's fascinating to imagine how different The Five Heartbeats might have been with Whitney Houston's star power and incredible voice bringing that character to life. Fact 5. Denzel Washington was too expensive for Eddie. Robert Townsend's first choice to play Eddie King Jr., the immensely talented but deeply troubled lead singer of The Five Heartbeats, was none other than Denzel Washington, who by 1991 had already established himself as one of Hollywood's most respected dramatic actors. Townsend envisioned Washington bringing his incredible range and intensity to the complex role of Eddie, a character who needed to convincingly portray both the soaring highs of musical stardom and the devastating lows of drug addiction and personal destruction. Unfortunately for Townsend's vision, Washington's asking price was simply beyond what the film's budget could accommodate, forcing the director to look elsewhere for his leading man despite his strong preference for the acclaimed actor. This budget limitation was particularly frustrating because Washington would have been perfect for the role, given his proven ability to handle both dramatic intensity and the kind of emotional vulnerability that Eddie's character arc demanded throughout the film's 3-decade timeline. The financial reality of independent filmmaking meant that Townsend had to make difficult choices about where to allocate his limited resources, and paying a major star's salary would have severely impacted other crucial aspects of the production. Instead of Washington, the role ultimately went to Michael Wright, a relatively unknown actor at the time, who delivered what many consider to be the film's most powerful and heartbreaking performance. Wright's portrayal of Eddie became so iconic and emotionally resonant that it's now impossible to imagine anyone else in the role, proving that sometimes budget constraints can lead to unexpected casting gold that serves the story even better than the original big-name choice might have. Fact 6. Real Dells sang, while actors lip-synced live. In one of the most unusual promotional strategies ever devised for a movie, Robert Townsend arranged for the cast of The Five Heartbeats to perform live concerts alongside the Dells, the legendary rhythm and blues group that served as the film's primary inspiration and technical advisors. During these promotional performances, the real members of the Dells would provide all the actual vocals while the actors from the movie would lip-sync and perform the choreography on stage, creating a bizarre but fascinating hybrid between live musical performance and theatrical presentation. This arrangement allowed audiences to experience the powerful voices that had inspired the film's story while watching the actors who brought those characters to life on screen. The Dells, who had been performing professionally since the 1950s and were renowned for their incredible harmonies and stage presence, handled all the singing responsibilities during these concerts. Meanwhile, Robert Townsend, Michael Wright, Leon Robinson, Harry Lennox, and Tico Wells performed the visual aspects of the show, including the dancing and stage movements that they had perfected during filming. The concept was essentially the reverse of what typically happens in movies, where actors lip-sync to pre-recorded tracks during filming, but sing live during promotional appearances. Instead, Townsend created a situation where the fictional group members could perform alongside their real-life counterparts, giving fans a unique opportunity to see both the movie characters and the actual musical legends who inspired them sharing the same stage. This promotional approach also solved the practical problem of having actors who were primarily known for their acting abilities attempt to match the vocal prowess of one of rhythm and blues music's most celebrated groups. Fact 7. 3-minute national anthem annoyed Michael Jordan? During the promotional tour for the 5 Heartbeats in February of 1991, the cast and crew attended a Chicago Bulls vs. Boston Celtics game, where they arranged for 12-year-old Tressa Thomas, who played Duck's little sister in the movie, to sing the national anthem before the game began. What should have been a routine promotional appearance turned into an awkwardly long spectacle when Thomas delivered a 3-minute and 39-second rendition of the Star-Spangled Banner, making it significantly longer than most typical performances of the song at sporting events. To put this timing in perspective, Whitney Houston had performed what many consider the greatest national anthem of all time at the Super Bowl just weeks earlier, and her iconic version lasted only 1 minute and 27 seconds. Thomas's performance was nearly 3 times longer, which created an increasingly uncomfortable situation for everyone in the arena, especially the players who were eager to start the game. According to Robert Townsend, who was sitting courtside as part of the promotional event, Michael Jordan became visibly impatient as the song stretched on and on. Townsend later recalled that Jordan, who was clearly ready to begin playing basketball, kept looking over at him with what the director described as the eye, a pointed stare that communicated the basketball superstar's growing frustration with the unusually extended patriotic performance. The situation became so noticeable that it turned what was supposed to be a celebratory promotional moment into an awkward endurance test for everyone involved. Despite the lengthy anthem, the Bulls went on to dominate the Celtics that night, winning the game by a decisive score of 129-99, perhaps channeling their pent-up energy from the extended pre-game ceremony. Fact 8. Film was delayed 3 years. Robert Townsend went into the 5 Heartbeats with high expectations and complete confidence that he had created an instant hit, but the harsh realities of Hollywood business practices turned what should have been a triumphant follow-up to his successful independent film, Hollywood Shuffle, into a frustrating 3-year ordeal that nearly killed the project entirely. After completing production, Townsend fully expected the movie to be released quickly and become an immediate commercial and critical success. Riding on the momentum he had built with his previous work and the genuine passion he had poured into this deeply personal story about rhythm and blues music. Instead of the smooth release he anticipated, the 5 Heartbeats became trapped in a web of studio politics and distribution challenges that kept it sitting on the shelf, while Townsend watched his carefully crafted film collect dust rather than finding its audience. The extended delay was particularly painful because Townsend knew he had created something special, but he was powerless to get it into theaters, while various behind-the-scenes issues played out at 20th Century Fox. During this agonizing waiting period, the director had to watch other films come and go while his own work remained unreleased, creating enormous stress and uncertainty about whether the movie would ever see the light of day. The 3-year delay also meant that by the time the 5 Heartbeats finally reached theaters in March of 1991, some of the cultural momentum and industry buzz that had initially surrounded the project had dissipated. This extended limbo period tested Townsend's resolve as a filmmaker and nearly derailed what would eventually become one of the most beloved musical dramas in cinema history, proving that even the most passionate and well-crafted projects can fall victim to the unpredictable machinery of studio system politics. Fact 9. Soundtrack credits fictional characters. The Virgin Records soundtrack for the 5 Heartbeats employed a completely unique and unprecedented crediting system that listed the fictional characters from the movie as the actual recording artists instead of crediting the real singers who provided the vocals, creating a deliberate blurring of the line between the film's fictional world and reality. This unusual approach meant that songs on the official soundtrack album were credited to names like Eddie King Jr. and the Five Heartbeats, rather than identifying the actual professional musicians who performed the tracks, such as members of the Dells and other established rhythm and blues artists, who contributed their voices to bring the movie's musical sequences to life. This creative decision was particularly striking because it treated the fictional characters as if they were real recording artists with their own musical careers, essentially extending the movie's storytelling beyond the screen and into the record store. When fans purchased the soundtrack, they were buying an album that maintained the illusion that the Five Heartbeats were an actual group with a real discography, rather than acknowledging that these were performances by established musicians playing fictional roles. The approach was so convincing that many listeners genuinely believed they were hearing recordings by the characters themselves, rather than talented session musicians and established artists. The strategy proved especially effective because it helped listeners stay immersed in the film's world even when they were just listening to the music at home, making the soundtrack feel like a genuine artifact from the Five Heartbeats' fictional career, rather than simply a collection of songs from a movie. This innovative crediting approach was virtually unheard of in soundtrack production at the time and helped reinforce the authenticity and emotional connection that made the Five Heartbeats such a powerful and enduring musical drama. Fact 10. Harold Nicholas choreographed at age 70. Harold Nicholas, one half of the legendary Nicholas Brothers tap-dancing duo that dazzled audiences throughout Hollywood's golden age, was 70 years old when Robert Townsend cast him to play Ernest Sarge Johnson, the choreographer who teaches the Five Heartbeats their signature dance moves and stage presence. Nicholas brought an incredible level of authentic show business history to the production, having performed alongside some of the greatest entertainers of the 20th century, including appearances in classic films like Stormy Weather and The Pirate, where he famously danced with Gene Kelly in a groundbreaking racially integrated performance. The casting of Nicholas was particularly meaningful because he represented a direct connection to the real entertainment world that the Five Heartbeats was trying to recreate, having lived through the exact era and experiences that the fictional group was navigating in the film. During his decades-long career with his brother Fayard, Harold Nicholas had performed for the same audiences, dealt with the same racial barriers, and worked with many of the same record labels and venues that groups like the Dells and the Temptations encountered during their rise to fame in the 1950s and 60s. Despite being well into his 70s, Nicholas still possessed the grace, timing, and natural charisma that had made him one of the most celebrated dancers in American entertainment history. His presence on set provided not only acting talent, but also served as a living masterclass for the younger actors who had to learn complex choreography and stage movements. The legendary performer brought decades of professional wisdom and authentic show business knowledge to his role, helping to ground the film's musical sequences in the real traditions and techniques that actual rhythm and blues groups used during their peak years of popularity. Fact 11. Townsend wrote Meteor Man's script on set. Robert Townsend's incredible work ethic and creative energy were on full display during the production of the Five Heartbeats, as he used whatever free time he could find between directing duties to write the screenplay for his next ambitious project, The Meteor Man, which would eventually be released in 1993. While most directors would find it challenging enough to handle the demanding responsibilities of directing, producing, and starring in a complex musical drama, Townsend somehow managed to carve out quiet moments on set to develop an entirely different kind of story about a mild-mannered school teacher who gains superpowers and becomes a neighborhood superhero. This multitasking approach meant that Townsend was essentially living in two completely different creative worlds simultaneously, switching between the rhythm and blues atmosphere of 1960s Motown that defined the Five Heartbeats and the contemporary urban superhero fantasy that would become The Meteor Man. Between takes of emotional dramatic scenes or elaborate musical numbers, Townsend would retreat to his trailer or find a quiet corner of the set to jot down ideas, dialogue, and plot points for his superhero screenplay, demonstrating an almost superhuman level of creative focus and productivity. The contrast between these two projects could not have been more dramatic, with the Five Heartbeats being a deeply personal and historically grounded story about the music industry's impact on friendship and artistic integrity, while The Meteor Man represented a completely different genre focused on comedy, special effects, and fantastical storytelling. Townsend's ability to develop both projects simultaneously shows not only his remarkable creative stamina, but also his diverse range as a filmmaker, proving that he could move seamlessly between intimate character-driven dramas and big-budget entertainment spectacles while maintaining his unique voice and vision as a storyteller. Fact 12. Diahann Carroll chose this over Boys in the Hood. Diahann Carroll, the groundbreaking actress who had already made history as the first African-American woman to star in her own television series with Julia in the 1960s, faced a difficult decision in 1991 when she was offered roles in two major films that would both become significant landmarks in black cinema. Carroll ultimately chose to appear in The Five Heartbeats as Eleanor Potter, the supportive wife of the group's manager Jimmy Potter, turning down an opportunity to be part of John Singleton's powerful and critically acclaimed debut film Boys in the Hood, which was released just a few months later that same year. This decision is particularly interesting when considering the different trajectories these two films would take in cinema history, with Boys in the Hood becoming an immediate critical darling and cultural phenomenon that earned Singleton an Academy Award nomination for Best Director, making him the youngest person and first African-American ever nominated in that category. Meanwhile, The Five Heartbeats received mixed reviews from critics upon its initial release and performed modestly at the box office, though it would eventually find its audience and become a beloved classic through home video and television broadcasts. Carroll's choice to work with Robert Townsend on The Five Heartbeats demonstrated her faith in the project's musical storytelling and her appreciation for its celebration of rhythm and blues history, even though it meant passing up the opportunity to be part of what many critics immediately recognized as a groundbreaking piece of urban cinema. Her performance as Eleanor Potter became one of the film's emotional anchors, particularly in the scenes dealing with her husband's tragic fate and her eventual forgiveness of Eddie King Jr. during the film's redemptive conclusion. Fact 13. Jackie Wilson, window scene, was allegedly real. One of the most shocking and terrifying scenes in The Five Heartbeats occurs when the corrupt record label owner Big Red Davis physically assaults and dangles a singer out of a high-rise window during a violent confrontation over unpaid royalties, demonstrating the extreme lengths that some unscrupulous music industry executives would go to in order to intimidate and control their artists. According to various rumors and industry stories that circulated for years, this disturbing scene was allegedly based on a real incident that supposedly happened to Jackie Wilson, the legendary soul singer known for hits like Lonely Teardrops and Higher, who faced numerous battles with record labels and managers throughout his career. The story claims that Wilson, like many African-American artists of his era, was systematically cheated out of royalties and publishing rights by predatory business practices that were unfortunately common in the music industry during the 1950s and 60s. According to these unverified accounts, Wilson's attempts to reclaim his rightful earnings led to a confrontation where he was allegedly threatened in a manner similar to what viewers see in the movie, with the window scene serving as Robert Townsend's way of illustrating the very real physical dangers that artists could face when challenging powerful industry figures. However, this connection has been strongly disputed by people who knew Wilson personally and worked closely with him during his career. Carl Davis, a prominent record producer who worked extensively in the Chicago music scene, has specifically denied these allegations, stating that he never heard Jackie Wilson or anyone else mention such an incident occurring. Davis suggested that these stories may have been spread by individuals with questionable motives who were exploiting older rhythm and blues artists for their own purposes, making the true origins of this dramatic scene unclear. Fact 14. Cast became real singing group with fights. The intense process of creating The Five Heartbeats led to an unexpected situation where the five lead actors genuinely transformed into something resembling a real singing group, complete with all the interpersonal drama, conflicts, and genuine friendships that typically develop between actual band members who spend months working closely together. According to Robert Townsend's revelations in his later documentary, Making the Five Heartbeats, the chemistry between Robert Townsend, Michael Wright, Leon Robinson, Harry Lennox, and Tico Wells became so authentic that they began experiencing the same kinds of personal tensions and emotional bonds that their fictional characters were supposed to be portraying on screen. This method, acting like immersion into their roles, created an environment where the boundaries between the actors' real personalities and their characters' relationships became increasingly blurred as filming progressed. Townsend later admitted with a chuckle that there were actual fights between cast members during production, not just the scripted conflicts that appeared in the movie, but genuine disagreements and personality clashes that arose from the pressure of the demanding shoot and the emotional intensity required for their performances. The director described how the actors would sometimes carry their on-screen rivalries and friendships into their off-camera interactions, creating a complex dynamic that both enhanced their performances and occasionally complicated the production process. This authentic group dynamic actually served the film well, as the real emotions and relationships that developed between the cast members translated into more believable and emotionally resonant performances on screen. The genuine camaraderie and occasional friction between the actors helped create the kind of authentic brotherhood and conflict that real singing groups experience, making their portrayal of the Five Heartbeats feel more natural and convincing to audiences who could sense the real chemistry between the performers. Fact 15. Movie changed from Temptations to Dell's inspiration. Robert Townsend's original vision for the Five Heartbeats was actually much more directly connected to the Temptations, with the filmmaker initially planning to base his story specifically on the experiences of that legendary Motown group and hoping to bring in former Temptations lead singers David Ruffin and Eddie Kendrick as technical advisors who could provide authentic details about the group's rise to fame and internal struggles. Townsend had personally met with both Ruffin and Kendrick during the early development stages of the project, recognizing that their real-world experiences with success, addiction, and the music industry's darker side would provide invaluable insight for creating a believable and emotionally powerful story. However, 20th Century Fox studio executives became increasingly nervous about the potential legal complications that could arise from creating a film so closely tied to the Temptations' actual history, particularly given that Berry Gordy Jr., the founder of Motown Records, still held significant power in the entertainment industry and was known for aggressively protecting his company's interests. The studio's legal department expressed serious concerns that Gordy might pursue a lawsuit if he felt the film was too closely based on his label's artists or revealed unflattering details about Motown's business practices, forcing Townsend to abandon his original concept. This corporate fear led to a complete creative pivot, with Fox essentially ordering Townsend to distance his story from the Temptations and instead work with the Dells, a respected but less legally problematic rhythm and blues group that had enjoyed a long career without the same level of Motown association. The Dells, who had been performing since the 1950s and had their own compelling story of longevity and artistic evolution, became the new primary inspiration for the film, bringing their decades of experience as technical consultants while allowing Townsend to avoid the potential legal minefield that a Temptations-based story might have created.